posted later on the Whitburn Center YouTube channel. And then we just ask that you keep your mics muted. And then also we will have time for questions and answers at the end of Chris's presentation. And so I will let Renee take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. And we're really excited to have you all with us today for Chris's presentation. My name is Renee Christensen. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a research assistant with the Whitburn Center for Governance and Policy Research, as well as a MPA student with the UW Oshkosh program. Again, thank you for joining us. And I think it'll be a really informative discussion surrounding digital governance today. But before we get started, just a little bit more about the Whitburn Center itself. So the Whitburn Center was established last fall of 2021, through a generous donation from our founding benefactor, UWO alumni Jerry Whitburn. Our mission is to conduct nonpartisan, practical applied research focused on evaluating and improving governance, professional management, and public policy in Wisconsin and beyond. Our vision's to build local government, nonprofit, and community capacity in order to promote the common good. But in order to do this work, it requires bringing people together in spaces like we are today to work together and sharing knowledge and equipping public professionals with the tools and resources to better understand the dynamic topics surrounding Wisconsin's public sector. We're happy to have you all learn alongside of us today. And on to this week's topic, digitizing government. So this week's presenter is UW alumni and Whitburn fellow Chris Astrella, who will lead us in a professional development session where he presents strategies to digitally transform local government. Chris will talk about the history of technology and public administration and give examples of how other industries have evolved over the past 20 years. Chris will also discuss his work as a consultant with HeyGov, providing a sneak peek of what the company does and how governments can use the services to increase civic engagement. A little bit about Chris. Chris was a clerk treasurer for over 16 years in the state of Wisconsin, most recently for the town of Oakland in Jefferson County. From 2012 through 2018, he served on the board of directors for the Wisconsin Municipal Clerks Association and was its 37th president from 2016 to 17. At the annual conference in 2021, he was officially proclaimed a clerk at heart by WMCA. Currently, he consults for HeyGov and TownWeb, two worldwide companies specializing in digitizing municipal government and municipal websites. Chris, his wife, Dr. Julie, and their dog Thumper moved to Southern Nevada in September of 2021, looking to escape the frigid Midwestern winters. Chris and Julie are both proud Green Bay Packers owners, Disney fans, they love to travel, and Chris loves to bike and shoot photography. He enjoys being able to eat at the In-N-Out Burger whenever he likes and finding all the incredible food Southern Nevada has to offer. Chris earned his undergraduate degree in political science in 2003 and his Master of Public Administration in 2021 from the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, and is a cheesehead at heart. So with that, Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
I think that was the first time somebody has ever introduced me ever. And that was awesome. I really appreciate that. It's kind of weird to hear about that because it's like, I did all that stuff. And it's when somebody does that, it's just like kind of blows my mind a little bit. So thank you for that invite. I really appreciate it. I am super excited to be here. I've been working for a while on this presentation, and I want to make sure that everybody gets something awesome out of this, and that I have allotted some time for questions, but I will say, if you want to ask a question while I'm in the middle of this, by all means, throw a virtual hand up, throw something in the chat. I don't mind stopping mid-slide or mid-sentence or whatever and doing that. So again, I'm super excited to be here. I wish we were all in person because I love that aspect of Whitburn Wednesdays, but virtually is just as cool. So I'm live from my house in Las Vegas. It's so great to be here, and happy Whitburn Wednesday to everybody. It's a holiday to be celebrated. So with that all being said, I'm going to jump right in. Renee introduced me. My name is Chris Astrella. I'm the government content insider from HeyGov. I have my MPA and my undergrad degree from UW Oshkosh. Oshkosh has always been very good to me, so it's really great for me to be here and to give back as being a fellow as the Whitburn Center. So we're going to jump right in. I know we talked a little bit about me, but I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but I love living in Southern Nevada. If any of you are ever out here to visit, I will happily take you to In-N-Out Burger or out for a drink on the Strip. It was really cool to be here as a tourist, but I really love living here and I'm really excited to be here. But again, I was a Wisconsin resident for 39 years. I don't miss winter one bit. But more specifically to why we're here today, I was a clerk treasurer in Wisconsin for over 16 years. I also served as a deputy administrator for almost 10 years. So I really have done a lot in local government in Wisconsin and really have been exposed to it. And part of the reason that HeyGov brought me on board is because of that experience. And working for HeyGov has been fantastic. My coworkers are great. The work that we do is awesome. And I really enjoy the people that we are interacting with in local government on a daily basis, trying to make their lives a little bit better. But I'm not here to sell anything because that's not why I'm here. I'm here to educate today about digital government, which just so happens to be what we do at HeyGov. So without anything else about myself or why we're here, we're going to jump right in. And before I talk about where we are and where we're going, I want to talk about where we've been and give kind of a brief overview of technology in local government. Local government really kind of started, local government's always been a thing. It was kind of, the genesis came from obviously the Revolutionary War and cities and counties and states and all that stuff. But technology in government really, it's really moved kind of segmented. And so this minute book right here, this is an actual minute book from the town of Oakland where I used to work. The town of Oakland was incorporated in 1850. So this is in the 1850s, this is how everything was done. And going back even further, everything was handwritten. The handwriting was beautiful. It was amazing how beautiful people wrote back then, but everything was on these thick, hardcover, tightly bound books. Everything, there weren't copies made. It was handwritten from the 1850s. And so for the longest time, that's really how local government technology and records were kept. That was just the only way that it could happen. Things moved along, I don't want to say nicely or at a sufficient speed, but they moved along. Typewriters and carbon paper were kind of the next steps of technology. Carbon paper really gave everybody the ability to make copies without making copies. And now it's carbonless paper. And ironically, it's still available today. I found it for sale. I don't even know. I just looked just to get a picture and I found it for sale. There was a box maybe of 300 or 400 for like $150. And I was totally surprised that people still use it. It's carbonless paper, but it's still available. And I will confess, when I did work at Oakland, I worked at Oakland for almost 3 years. We had one final document that was a carbon copy, and we were just using those carbons just to get through it. So I know that they're still available. People are still using them. They're not certainly as popular as they used to be. The biggest shift, though, from handwriting went to typing, and that was with the typewriter. The typewriter came along in the early 1900s. And many folks, including me, I first learned to type on my grandmother's electric typewriter in her house. But these were really dominant for probably 50, 60 years. That maybe they became electronic typewriters later, but typewriter, you throw your paper in, and then they invented the ribbon that you could white out stuff with it. So it was really, it was revolutionary to go from writing something to typing something. The increase in efficiency was exponential. Again, it certainly wasn't where we're at today, but it was amazing to have a typewriter and be able to do so much with it compared to writing everything on paper. In the last 30 years, and this is my own personal opinion, but in the last 30 years, this has really been where we've seen kind of the biggest changes. We went from the typewriter, we continued with that, but we went to fax machines. And I know fax machines are still around today. I still think it is absolutely bananas that you can plug in 2 fax machines in to a phone line and transmit paper between them. I know that technology is old. I just think it's incredible that you can actually do that and have the paper come out on the other end and have it be mostly legible. It really is an amazing feat of technology. And they've definitely fallen out of favor. One of the first things that I did when I started at Oakland was eliminate our fax line because we just weren't using it. But they're still around, they're still available, they're still reliable, and people are still using them. Then kind of from fax in the mid 90s, late 90s, email really took off. It really gave us in local government, and I was in high school and college at the time, but it gave all of us in local government the ability to deliver information from one of us to a lot of people at the same time. You can send attachments, you can send pictures, videos. I mean, we all know this today. Email is a part of our daily life. But back in the mid 90s, this was a huge deal. It didn't really start to replace regular mail, I don't think, until probably the 2000s, maybe the early 2010s. But it really revolutionized how we communicate with each other. From a local government perspective, we would have people, ask us for forms, ask us for permits, ask us for zoning applications, that sort of thing. We would email it off to them. They would print it out and send it back to us. It really sped up communication and delivering materials to residents, visitors, what have you, and becoming more efficient. About 10-ish years ago, maybe a little bit longer, but in local government, we got a little bit smarter, and we were like, we have a lot of people who are contacting us for these forms, and these permits, and these licenses. Why don't we put them on our website and have them help themselves? And so that's really how websites, they were always there, but I don't think they were necessarily used in the best possible way. And so in local government, we started putting those forms and those permits online and letting people know you can go help yourself. I mean, it's almost, it almost kind of removed some of the human, or it did remove some of the human interaction out of it, but it really sped up the process even more, because now instead of having to either make a phone call to their municipal office or send an email, residents can go right to their website and go, I need that form, and I'm going to download it and print it out myself, and then maybe I'm just going to email it back. So it even sped up things even more than they were already going. Where we in HeyGov kind of feel the next step is, and I think we all have kind of experienced this, is adding automation and workflow management and streamlining collaboration across departments. The future, we truly believe, is already here. And instead of maybe walking a form or a permit down to somebody else's office, you can fire it off to them, not even in an email, but in our system. And I'm not talking about our system specifically, but you can fire it off and have them look at it electronically, approve it, and send it back to you without even having to leave your office. It really is incredible what is out there now and what can be used to even streamline and make a government more efficient than hopefully it already is. And so what are some other industries doing? And where have they been, and where are they headed? This is my house in Las Vegas. My first house that I bought in Sun Prairie in 2006 was what you would expect. All of our forms needed to be brought into our mortgage officer in person, copies of our bank statements, copies of proof of employment, paycheck stubs, all that stuff. Everything had to be signed in person in front of her. Every signature had to be a wet signature. Effectively, I gave her a folder of our stuff. She reviewed it. We were good to go. That really was, for the longest time, how things went. This house that I bought was 100% not like that. My mortgage officer was in Los Angeles. I never actually met him in person. I talked to him on the phone a bunch, but all of my documents that I had to send to him were uploaded to a secure cloud that he removed. He downloaded everything, looked at everything, made sure everything was a-okay. You know, if there needed to be more items that I missed, he would shoot me an email. And then my wife and I DocuSigned all of our documents. At the closing, it was a little bit different, but for the actual funding of the mortgage, we DocuSigned everything. And then he sent us a zip file with all of our files on there. It's still, even to this day, it still blows my mind that I'm sitting in a house right now that I didn't meet the person who actually funded my mortgage for. It's so crazy, but that is really how things are moving with buying a house. Again, the future is already here. Airlines are another great example of evolvement and making things more efficient in their industry. Before, and I traveled a little bit when I was a kid, so I remember paper tickets. If you used to get bumped for whatever reason, you'd get an actual paper voucher that had, you know, the amount of money that you were credited, paper boarding passes. You can still do paper boarding passes at the airport today, but realistically, everything is done through an airline's app. It's electronic tickets, boarding passes, and now I don't normally check a bag. Sometimes when I travel for work, I have to, but now you can track your bags completely through the app. When it works, it's great. And when your bag actually makes it to your final destination, that's even better, and everybody kind of celebrates. But the airlines, you know, it's interesting being such a customer service focused industry. They really have taken a lot of the people out of their process. Some would say that's a good thing. Some would say that's a bad thing. I don't know what the answer to that is, but like it or not, that's really how flying is right now. Everything is electronic. Everything is through their app. Even if your flight gets canceled, you can immediately go into their app and find the next available one to book yourself on, and you don't even have to talk to a person to do that. It really is incredible. Finally, is banking, and before, and I'll talk specifically about me, but even before, everybody banked in person at a bank. ATM machines and time machines were a new kind of thing in the mid to late 80s, early 90s. But you always had to go to the drive up or to the teller window to get your cash, to make your transactions, whatever it is. Both my wife and I still are Bank of Sun Prairie customers, and we bank on our phone. It is totally the future of banking. Remote deposit is incredible. I get paid electronically. Almost everybody gets paid electronically now, but if I ever get a check, I snap a picture of the front and back, upload it through my banking app, and it's deposited and available to me within a day or two. That is just absolutely amazing. And it really is indicative of how, you know, in total, of how all the other industries have done what they've done, and they've done a great job. But it's up to government to try and catch up to where they're at. And so what I want to talk about is what the pre-COVID processes were in local government. And I know we all remember, you know, pre-COVID, everything was cool, no masks, no social distancing, you know, big groups were a thing. And it's great that we've kind of come through the pandemic and made it to the other side. But things have certainly changed in the 2.5 years since COVID started. And we've got to talk about that. Filling out forms, it really is, it's manual, and it can be tedious. Realistically, how it was before, if a PDF is on a municipal website, a resident can download it, print it out, and then fill it out, and then they have a choice. They can write a check or pay with cash, and that means either mailing it or bringing it in. There's nothing wrong with this. It's definitely not efficient. It can take up to 30 minutes depending on how far away this person lives. Do they own a printer? Are the forms filled out correctly? As I mentioned, it's tedious, but something that really we all need to think about is these forms only could get processed during business hours. So, you know, typical 8 to 4, 9 to 5, you have to get that form in to get it processed during business hours. Not everybody works that standard schedule. And certainly out here in Las Vegas, with the hospitality industry being so enormous, there's all different kinds of schedules out here. So keeping that in mind, it really is, it's crucial that whether it's via a Dropbox via mail or doing it in person, that you get whatever form you need, whatever permit you need to your municipal office during business hours. So keep thinking about that, because we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. I mentioned this, not everybody has technology. Our president and CEO of HeyGov, Dustin, actually had to go buy a printer a couple of months ago because he didn't have one, and he's a few years older than me. It just goes to show not everybody has a printer, not everybody has a scanner. I have a scanner on my phone. I can do it. I can scan something one page at a time, but I don't have access to a high-speed scanner or anything like that that will turn something into a PDF like I used to at working at my government office. Another thing that we've discovered interacting with local governments is that not everybody has a public-facing calendar for reservations or for events that are going on in their municipality. A lot of times, in terms of, say, park reservations or town hall rentals, things like that, they have to call up and say and ask, is the room available? How much is it? What's the checkout process? How do I pay? All that stuff. Some have calendars, but a lot don't. And so that's again, something to keep in mind. Maybe you'll see something about that in the next couple of slides. And then finally, the dominant ways of paying have been cash and check. The only exception to this that I have found in my life and in my career has been utility companies. Utilities, and I'm not even talking about municipal utilities, I'm talking about all utilities. Cable, TV, internet, phones, all that. They all really jumped onto electronic payments quickly, probably 15, maybe 20 years ago. And that's great. Like that is absolutely fabulous. We all get our bills emailed to us. Some of us have auto pay. It's fantastic. It really, you don't have to sit down at your table and write out a check for all of your bills at the end of the month like people used to do. That's something that local government really hasn't jumped on the bandwagon for, or if they have, it's almost like maybe I'm going to dip my toe into it and not go all in on it. So something to keep in mind for the rest. We're going to talk about that a little bit more as we go along. But really, it's slow and it's inefficient and it's tedious. And so these forms, they're there and they're there for a reason, and they're there to help and serve our residents and accomplish the business that needs to be done. But there has to be a better way to do it. And that's kind of where digital government comes in. But before we talk about that, I want to share a quick video with you. You might see a familiar face in it. There's no sound, so don't worry about hearing anything. But this was the April 2020 election that we weren't sure if it was going to happen or not in Wisconsin. And my video is just taking a minute to load up. But this is the town of Oakland Town Hall for this election just after COVID hit. We had everybody voting in their cars. We didn't have people coming into the town hall. We didn't have, and I'm just going to show it one more time from the beginning because it's not very long. We didn't have people coming in. Everybody was outside. One of my poll workers there has PPE on. This was what we had to do when COVID hit. We had to adapt on the fly. We didn't have a whole lot of help, and we all did the best that we could. And I'm not even just talking about clerks come election time, but all of us as municipal employees, we all did that. We had barriers that were built to keep people separated from each other, single-use pens, there I am again, single-use pens. It really was an incredible way to conduct elections that I almost still can't believe I lived through because it's just so surreal to anything that I had ever done. And so it really was, this really demonstrates just how crazy things were. My wife was, before we moved out here, she was a nursing professor at UW, and she had to move her classes that were completely in person, completely online during her week of spring break. That's what her spring break was. And I think she had 3 classes that she had to do. Her one class had 166 students. So how do you do that where you can reach everybody and still educate them at the same time? It was just amazing, an amazing time to be alive, an amazing situation to go through. And I'm sure it will make a great case study for the future. I'm sure it will. And I'm sure people are already doing that. So it just gives you a window into what we were all experiencing. But again, I want to talk a little bit more about COVID. You know, municipal buildings were closed. There was Governor Evers had our stay-at-home order for, I think it was 2 or 3 months, where everything was closed. People were working from home, and they never expected to. There were shortages of hand sanitizer. Big single-use pens were increasingly popular, especially come election time. There were no more handshakes. We all had to adapt on the fly. Virtual school came out of nowhere, including those of us who were in grad school at the time, like me. And Lysol was everywhere. We learned what PPE was. We learned so many things, about infection control and social distancing. And it's just amazing that we actually all, learned from that and made it through to the end, and now can kind of study that. But we also have to remember, like, what changes we had to make to adapt. And so really, in short, I know Dr. Ford doesn't like reading the words off of a PowerPoint slide, but the words are important. We all had to adapt, no matter the industry. If you were a first responder, police, fire, or EMS, you had to always have a mask on, regardless if you were pulling somebody over for speeding. If you were, responding to an emergency call, to a fall, we didn't know anything about COVID, and so it was, mask up, glove up, have that PPE ready, have your hand sanitizer. It was incredible. It was, teaching virtually, all ages of school, from kindergarten up through college, through graduate school. It was, no matter where you were, we all had to adapt. And even though I wasn't living here in Las Vegas at the time, the whole city was shut down for 3 months. All the hotels were closed. All the shows were dark. All the restaurants were closed. There were tens of thousands of people that were out of work because nobody was coming here to spend their money and have a great time. And so it didn't matter where you were, where you lived, we all had to adapt. Even though I was going to work in person, there was changes for me that I never even could have imagined that affected everybody else. And so it's important to remember that. COVID really forced, and this is the problem that we've seen. It forced everybody to go digital, especially local governments, as best as they could. And everybody did as great of a job as they could with what they had available to them. But what we're seeing now is that 2+ years later, a majority of municipalities are still not working digitally, or they're kind of reverting back to what they had done pre-COVID. Kind of those old paper processes that aren't efficient, that are tedious, that there's so much room for improvement, but that's what was familiar for them, and they're reverting back to that. And so we see, and really, I think the public sees this. The solution is digital government is the solution, and really it's because the people are asking for it. Because we all had to adapt and do things on the fly. One example that I'll give to you, we closed our town hall during property tax collection season. And so I was texting people their property tax receipt from my personal cell phone to their phone. And I didn't have a problem with it. I didn't. Our town board at the time felt it was important to keep everybody safe. We weren't sure about variants, and I don't think the vaccine was readily available yet. And so it was important, to keep everybody safe but still get the work done. And so, we did our best to put communications out through press releases on our website, in newspapers, to let everybody know there are other options for you to get your tax receipt and to pay your tax bill other than coming in. But again, at that time, we didn't accept credit cards, so you couldn't pay for them with a credit card. You still had to use cash or checks. And fortunately, we had a Dropbox, so things worked out well. But the people are getting used to it and asking for it. And so really, it speaks to, why should you go digital? And I really believe the most important thing is because the people are asking for it, and now they expect it. If you look at places like Target, like Walmart, like grocery stores, where all you have to do is drive into a spot, pop your trunk up, and they drop your order in. That's the expectation now. It's not even Amazon so much, delivering things the next day. If you're a Prime member, you can still go out and get your groceries and stuff, but you don't actually have to leave your car. Pizza delivery. Everybody remembers contactless delivery. Grubhub and Eat Street took off because you can have your dinner dropped off right at your door. It's amazing. But now, because of that, people are expecting that same type of experience with their local governments. I mentioned the magic E word, efficiency. And yes, it is one of the 4 pillars of public administration, but technology is cheaper than people. This isn't even an opinion. This is just a fact. If you can spend $10,000 on a piece of technology that will accomplish what 1 or 2 people can do, you're going to realize the savings there. A person with benefits, with vacation, with sick time, you're looking at, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, depending on what their position is. And so if it really comes down to money, which in Wisconsin, I know is a big deal because the levy limit is still in place. If you can only raise your levy, a certain percentage of net new construction, you really got to try and cut corners wherever you can if you can't raise more money. And so technology really is the only option to accomplish more with less funds. And that's always the name of the game. Technology is going to save money. Going digital is going to save money. The biggest thing, though, I believe, is saving time. There's a huge amount of time that can be saved on both ends of a form, whether you're filling it out as a resident or you're receiving it on the administrative end. And I'm seeing some comments here in the chat. This is great. And I'm glad that you guys shared this. We don't want Skynet to replace the administrator. Absolutely. And Fort Atkinson is a city of about 12 to 13,000. Their levy's going up $22,000 next year. I don't know what health insurance is going to go up, but that might eat it all up right there. And then you have to worry about, police and fire. And if you're going to give employees cost of living wage increases, there's so many other things that you have to worry about. And so the obvious and maybe the only answer until the levy limit in Wisconsin either gets eliminated or changed is technology. It's the really only option you have. The other thing you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of increased compliance, especially from younger folks. My colleague Megan is 25. She has only been to her bank twice, and that was to 1, open her accounts up, and 2, get her debit card out of the ATM machine because it ate it. And that's in 10 years. In 10 years, she has been to a bank twice because she uses her phone. And I'm another good example of that. I have a credit union here in Las Vegas. If I ever have cash, I deposit it in my credit union and then I electronically transfer it back home to Sun Prairie. I don't ever need to go to the bank unless I have cash. But what you see is younger folks, if they can't do it on their phone, and it's not even so much a computer, yes, but if they can't do it on their phone, they may not even do it at all. Whether that's licensing their dog, whether that's taking a building permit out, whether that's paying a ticket, they're so used to doing things on their phone and having it be so readily available. If they can't do it, they just won't do it. And you're going to see a big increase in compliance. I think from the social justice perspective and social equity, reaching the people where and when they are is also very important and something that going digital will really help with. An example that I will provide is an operator, a person who serves alcohol at a bar. Maybe that person works, 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. and then they have to sleep and they get up, at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and at 4 o'clock the town hall is closed. How can they get their operator's license if A, they're working after hours, and B, they're sleeping when the town hall is open most of the time? This is a way they can complete their form online, they can pay for it online, and they can get a downloadable PDF that they can prove to their boss, hey, I have my operator's license, I'm still legal to serve alcohol. That's just one example, but it's important because not everybody has a vehicle. Not everybody has the ability, some people are homebound. You've got some of the elderly folks who are homebound and want to interact with their government, but they can't. You've seen a lot more government meetings being placed online, either through YouTube links or through Zoom like this. We've seen more of a push, which has been great, but we can always do more. And then something that one of my colleagues found is an article that Salesforce, it's been from government technology, but Salesforce did a study and a survey, and the 4 conclusions, it was about digital government. The 4 conclusions that it reported were trust is the foundation of government business. And I think, and only because I did some work on this while I was in the MPA program, trust in government has definitely eroded from, say, the early 80s when Reagan was president till now. So how can we as public administrators bring trust back into government? But 2, global crisis increases digital demand. COVID demonstrated that. I mean, hands down, COVID demonstrated that. And we all know it. Technology powers transformation, which is totally true. It's not that you have to go completely digital, flip the switch and it's time to go. You can do it gradually over months, over weeks, no big deal. Or if you want to go digital like that, you can do it. But finally, and I think this speaks to employee engagement and making sure that we retain as many employees as we can. Investment in the employee experience pays off for everybody. And this is huge, because if we can make employees' jobs easier, better, they tend to be happier, they'll stay. It's a lot easier to keep somebody in their position than to have to train somebody new to take over for them. So it's just something to keep in mind, why going digital is so important. And now, I want to transition to digital. So if we imagine that timeline that I had set out that was long and tedious and blah 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 blah. Now, if you go digital, you visit the form, you fill it out completely online, you pay online. This can take 5 minutes or less. Going digital, and again, I mentioned this a little bit, you can accept payments online. You can save paper, which everybody is all for saving paper. I think we all love trees. But realistically, government has always been in this, how can we save more paper? How can we use less paper? How can we be more efficient? Less paper is awesome. This is cool. Like, this is really cool stuff. I knew about this a little bit when I was a clerk, and a little bit, before I moved out to Nevada. But now that I'm working for HeyGov and I'm kind of knee deep in this stuff, this is really cool stuff. This is something that I'm excited to be a part of. But it's a generational change as to how people will interact and engage with their government. And I mentioned this a little bit. People now, I think, due to Amazon, and I don't know if this is a word, but I'm going to go with it, due to the Amazonification of our society, they want to be able to help themselves more. We see people who we interact with through local government. They want to know, can I build my own forms online? I want you guys to do it, but if I have more forms, can I do it myself? These are administrators in local government. But I think the reality is people are used to going to a website, trying to find the information out for themselves. And this is just a natural progression of that. So again, something to keep in mind for the future. Digital government, in short, is faster. It's way less tedious. It's so much faster. It's so much more efficient. It's something that, if it's HeyGov, if it's a different company, it doesn't matter. As long as you start to embrace digital government, you're going to see things pick up and make your residents and your visitors a lot more excited and a lot more happier about what they're doing. So these are some of the forms, the licenses, the applications, the permits that we see. This is, and we mainly operate out of Wisconsin, but people all over the country, have dog licenses, building permits, operators licenses. One thing that we've really seen an uptick in is with the regulation of Airbnbs, especially even here in Clark County in Nevada. September 1st, our short-term rental ordinance went into effect. And so the county had to come up with the ordinance to regulate it, but the permit and all the stuff that comes with it. And so we're seeing this across the country. This is kind of the hot button issue right now, is the short-term rental thing. But because they were never regulated before, And now local governments are seeing this as an opportunity to make some money because they are. And you need to find ways to make more money. This is one of the ways to do it. So these are the big ones that we see, but there's so many more. I mean, I used to have mobile home park permits in Oakland. There's so many more that are out there that could be digitized to really increase the user experience for people, for residents, but also make staff jobs a lot easier. I can't say this enough, but the future of local government is already here. It was before COVID, it was coming. Now it's here. What I've found out, and I think most of you would agree, a one-size-fits-all government's approach doesn't work. Maybe you're not going to use, online reservations. Maybe you don't have a boat launch or something like that. But some form of digitizing your government. I mean, you've got to do something. You've got to streamline it for your employees, for your residents. It doesn't matter. Find a product that works for you. There are some. We have some competitors out there. We all do something. I would say that we're the best, but I'm supposed to say that we're the best. But honest to goodness, find something that works for you, that's out there, that will make your life, your staff's lives, the lives of your residents and your visitors better. Don't feel like you need to eliminate a paper process right away, just in case. I've had some municipalities say, we want to cut off all paper as soon as we sign up. That's great. But you have to remember, you're going to have older folks who aren't necessarily comfortable with computers and technology, and you still want to have those paper processes. I think it's still important to have those at least, as for like a period of, like, say, 6 months to a year, and then cut everything off. But others are like, I'm done with paper. We're out. We want to go full digital, and that's fine too. Market this like it's the coolest thing ever, because it is. I said this once before, but let everybody know, okay, this is how things are going, but it's awesome. Be excited about it. Maybe not as excited as I am about it, but be excited about it. Be positive about it. Show them it's going to make their lives easier. It can be a little bit of a struggle at first. I remember when my grandmother was still alive, she had an old film camera. She was the picture taker in our family. And as a family, we got her a digital camera back when they first came out. And she used to walk around with 2 cameras around her neck because she didn't trust the digital camera about taking the pictures. And so, after a few years, she finally put the film camera away and went digital. But it's going to be a bit of a process, but make sure that you're there for them. And finally, and I mentioned this, government is usually slow to adapt, but the rest of the world, at least industry-wise, has kind of already passed us by with merchandise pickup, with drive-throughs, things like DocuSign. It's really time for local government to get on with what everybody else already expects. And I'm going to read this one verbatim, because again, I think this is super, super important. Everything that was done in person will now be done electronically because the public expects it now. We all learned that from COVID. People are asking for it more than they ever have. Can I pay my taxes online? Can I, apply for a license online? That's the expectation now. So what are municipalities doing today? I've got a couple of examples that I'm going to share with you. I'm getting close to being done, so I will have some time for questions. But I've got a couple of our customers that I'm just going to show what they have. The town of Remington is in Northwest Wisconsin. Right now they have 7 different municipal forms that their residents can fill out. And each form is filled out on a laptop or a phone with a digital signature. It can go either way. They accept payments online for each of those forms. Each form comes with a workflow showing the process, when it was started, when it was completed, if somebody else needs to fill it out or sign off on it. It's all right there. Other departments can participate. So in the terms of an operator's license, typically a background check would need to be done. So you can fire it off to the police chief. They can do their background check, and they'll send it back to the clerk and say either everything's okay, or here's something that the board needs to know about. It's all electronic now. I mentioned the greater compliance you're going to see, especially from younger folks. This will definitely increase some revenue and it has for them. And the big one, in my opinion, is it saves time for everybody. They're very happy with it, not just from a HeyGov perspective, but that they can offer this service to their residents. the village of Tuskilwa is about an hour southwest of Chicago. And this is a different scenario because their residents demanded a change. They demanded an electronic way to pay their utility bills. They were tired of writing checks and having to do cash and having to be there to make those payments. They wanted something that worked better for them. So they went, I don't want to say went after, but they approached their board, their staff in their municipality, and they said, we want something electronic. And this really, of course, this saves time. But the two things that I really want to point out for Tuskilwa, it gives the people what they want. The people ask for this. It's an affordable solution, and they're happy because they can do it. The screenshot is from April, but you can see there's payments coming in virtually every day. And even today, that's still true. But one other thing is this increases engagement. Not everybody can make it to board meetings in the evening. Not everybody wants to make it to board meetings in the evening. So this is a way you can increase engagement, not just from a payment perspective, but from licensing, from citizen reporting, from payments, from reservations. You can engage with your residents, with your visitors electronically when otherwise you wouldn't be able to engage with them at all. So that's a positive right there. And then one other thing I want to talk about, and I've actually seen this a lot in Las Vegas, but QR codes are very popular. We've got one that we're working on for a customer for their boat launch, but it's boat launches, parking, permits. This is another way, and I'll talk about the boat launch. You scan the QR code, you fill in your information, you pay for it, you get out on the water. I used to own a boat in Wisconsin, and I hated having to fill out the little piece of paper with the envelope, the top of the envelope. You tear it off, put it on the dash. This gets me in the water faster. And if I have a boat, I want to be in the water as fast as I possibly can. Not going to receive any more empty envelopes, which are definitely a thing. There's no more equipment to maintain. And in terms of that, I mean, like parking meters. And this is the biggest thing that I've seen here in Nevada is that parking meters almost don't exist anymore. It's a QR code, you scan it and you pay for your parking like that. I even think UW-Oshkosh's campus has that as well, where you can pay for parking completely online by either going to a website or scanning a QR code. I think because I did it once. And so this saves a bunch of time for everybody, a bunch of paperwork. You're not gonna have any more crumpled up, gross, janky sock money. And there's no mound of money to count. When we would collect our boat launch money in Oakland from a weekend in the summer, my deputy at the time would have this mound of money on her desk, and it would take her 2 to 3 hours to sort it, count it, and get it ready for deposit. And then we would have to go deposit to the bank. This way, it's all done online. It's all super efficient because efficiency is king here. And this isn't a new idea. This is something that's been around for a little while. These are a couple emails that we've received from colleagues of mine asking about electronic payments of utility bills. This is something that's been talked about for a while. This is Diane in the village of Port Edwards. And then Tara in the village of Mazamani. This is from over a year ago, where she was asking about park rental reservations and having to refund deposits and payments and all that stuff. So this is something that's been around for a while. I remember people asking me about paying their property taxes, 10 years ago with a credit card, and it wasn't something that we offered then, but it's been around for a while. It's just COVID kind of accelerated all that. And so in closing, I want to talk about a little bit of the savings, kind of fourth grade style, and whether or not you work for a local government. If you work for one, you can use this from that perspective, but if you fill out a form, think about how many permits per year you issue. What's the cost? How much time does it take for you or your team to process a permit? How much time does it take for you as a resident to fill that out? Do you want to cut that in half? That's what digital government will do. That's the savings that you're going to see. And once people use it more, they're going to be more inclined to engage with it. And I think that's really what's key here. Digital government, on the whole, going digital will generate you more revenue. It will save your staff time. It will save your residents and visitors time. It will save you money, which is huge. It will lead to greater compliance, and it will totally increase citizen engagement. This is just what we've seen on kind of our level, and I know from a local level we'll see it exponentially increase. So with that, I'm going to drink a little bit more water, but I'm going to open it up for questions. Whatever you guys have for questions, we've got some time left. But if you wanted to share how you embrace digital government at work, what would you like to see that maybe you don't right now or didn't hear me talk about? But I really appreciate everybody being here today and talking about, and at least listening to me talk about this. But I want to hear what you guys have to say and maybe have a little bit more discussion.
So I would encourage anybody to go ahead and either unmute themselves and ask Chris questions, or go ahead and put them in the chat, and he can read them from there as well.
Don't be shy.
Well, I won't be shy, Chris. First off, really good job. I guess my question is, are we training the next generation of government leaders in this technological mindset? I guess that's one thing that I'm curious if you think people are doing it well in MPA programs. So you can speak specifically to our program, of course, but just in general, are there ways that we can better prepare future government leaders to work in this mindset in this space?
Well, and I think that's a great question. One of the things that we've seen in the conferences that I've been going to is we will have maybe an older clerk or treasurer who's retiring, say by the end of the year, and they'll bring the person that's going to take over for them, and they'll say, I don't want you to talk to me about HeyGov or digital government. I want you to talk to the person who's going to replace me about it. And that's what I've, at least anecdotally, that's what I've seen in the conferences that I go to, is that as the older, more seasoned clerks and treasurers and administrators retire, the younger ones that are coming up are seeing how things have always been done. And they're like, there's got to be a better way to do it. And so I don't know in terms of the MPA program, if there's more that you all and we all can do about it. But I think just people realizing and looking at things, always looking at a way to improve and be more efficient. I think efficiency really is key, because tax levies can't go up, at least right now in Wisconsin, they can't go up at all. And so how can you accomplish what you need to with more efficiency and the same amount of people piling more work onto them? But as younger folks come into these positions, they are asking those questions. I've really experienced that a lot. I see Dr. Larson has her hand up. I get to call on her for the first time in my life.
That's right. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Well, so I really liked the examples that you provided to folks at the end. And I'm just curious, because of course, I'm an academic, so I have to pose the other side. I'm just curious, like, what you all have learned when people are trying to implement this and, kind of transform the way they're doing things. Like, what are some of the bigger like challenges or hiccups that folks should be aware of when they're trying to, bring something like this into their operations, and any tips for people that are trying to navigate this if it's a new space for them?
Yeah, the decision makers are really where it's at, and I can pick on Dr. Ford a little bit because he is one. But typically in smaller municipalities, maybe mid-sized municipalities, you've got older folks who are in charge who aren't as comfortable with technology, and that's not a bad thing. But if we, from a HeyGov perspective, can convince the clerk or the treasurer or the administrator to use us as a solution, that's awesome. But then we also have to convince the board, which can be a lot harder, A, because that's more than one person, but B, they may not be as comfortable with technology as the rest of us are. And so I think, honestly, not even from a sales or just an increasing business perspective, but just making sure that those decision makers are comfortable enough with technology that this, nobody's going to die if a form isn't filled out correctly. This isn't like life or death stuff, but making sure that they're comfortable enough with it to implement it. I think that's really been kind of our biggest I'll say roadblock. It's a bump in the road, but roadblock. And also this is, while this has been a thing for a while, digital government it's still a newer concept. And so people are like, digital government, what are you talking about? What do you mean I can fill a form or a permit out online? They're just not used to that. So I think education, and then, you know, making sure that we've got people who are comfortable with technology that, you know, are willing to use it. That was a great question. Do we have any other questions? We got a few minutes left, and I've got plenty of water, so.
Oh, Chris, I'll ask you since nobody's speaking up, and that's okay. What type of pushback do you sometimes see within government organizations when you try to implement this? Because I could see how some folks might think it's a little bit threatening. It's going to mean fewer jobs, or it's going to make me obsolete.
Yes, that actually specifically was one of them that we had. I did something similar to this in June. It was in person. And one of the clerks that was actually in the audience was like, well, is this going to take my job away? No, I mean, it's not. That's the thing. Like, this is just digitizing the process that already exists and making a clerk or treasurer's or administrator's job easier. And so that's the key. I think one of the other pushbacks, I mean, obviously price, and not that, you know, not from, you know, how much it costs to go with HeyGov, but can we fit it into our budget? Do we actually have the capacity in our budget to afford what you have to offer? And again, not that we're expensive, because I don't believe that we are, but with levy limits being what they are, and we studied this in the program, there is a limited pie, and how can we reallocate some of that pie to get this, even though it's going to save, you know, time and money and all that good stuff that I talked about, can we actually afford it? And that's, I think that's a big one too. I mean, in terms of our pricing structure, we've kind of geared it towards that, but it really is going to come down to if there is funds available, can municipal government afford that?
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one other thing, maybe along those lines, is not seeing the long-term impact that this might have. You know, you see, and when I do a demo for somebody, you see this great system that we have that's super easy to use, and, you know, I think is affordable, but it's like, how is that going to pay off for me years down the road? I don't know. Am I going to have to hire another person or not hire another person? I can't quantify that for somebody. They have to be willing to jump on that bandwagon and kind of take a little bit of a leap of faith. It's something that we handle and we deal with, but it is what it is. I hate to use that, but it is what it is.
That was really great, Chris. Does anybody else have any last minute questions that they'd like to ask before we kind of wrap up here?
I'm happy to stick around for a couple of minutes. I think Dr. Ford made me the host or the co-host of the meeting, so I'll stick around the Zoom if anybody wants to stick around and ask me some questions. But this has been awesome. I'm so happy you guys asked me to do this.
And Chris, thank you so much for being here. And like he said, if you'd like to stick around, if you have any other questions. Also, just to let you know, just first, thank you all for coming and joining us today. And next month, we will be having Jessica Wilds and Aaron Schultz join us for tips and tricks on public and nonprofit grant writing. So if that's something that interests you, please join us. And I'm sure we will be sending out flyers for that as well. So once again, thank you, everybody. And again, this recording will be on the Whitburn Center webpage as well. And we'll see you next month.
Happy Whitburn Wednesday, everybody.